Hi, everyone. Welcome to Thrive Thursday. I'm Jen Fredericks here with Judy Dano and Rachel Bellotti, and we're here to talk a little bit more about the article that Judy wrote this week called I Figured It Out. And I'd like to throw it to Judy to see what your inspiration was before the video for the article and what you'd like to examine more during the video discussion.
Cool. So for me, what happened was I had been frustrated because my exercise routine had been super sporadic. And because I had been super sporadic, I was just in that space of trying to figure out how I could do it differently. And why, asking the question why it wasn't working. And from there, I started this exploration and decided that I wanted to take a pause. And I came to the realization that, I'm at a totally different place in my life right now than I was previously when I had a more consistent routine. And so maybe there was some exploration that I could do there to kind of figure out what it was that maybe motivated me now that didn't motivate me previously. And so I took a pause. I said, okay, let's stop for a second. Let's really take a look at where I'm at in life, like I said, and then from there, figure out what my why is. And what I landed on is the fact that I really want to continue to be able to do the things that I want to do in life. And I was feeling like the three things that were going to help me do that were to be able to have strength, flexibility, and health. And so as soon as I was able to take the pause, rethink through what my motivations were, understand that what had motivated me in the past wasn't the thing that was continuing to motivate me, because quite frankly, it wasn't even an issue for me anymore, what had motivated me in the past. So it was just taking that pause and getting that figured out. And then once I did that, I just it catapulted me into this routine, and I haven't looked back. And so I don't ever go into the space of, oh, shouldn't do this. I've just been kind of building this habit of staying in this routine. So that was the one thing. And the other thing that once I got clarity on those items or pieces that I was going to gain from the whole experience, I was able then to shift my focus continually to that. So
cool. Rachel, where have you been able to find ways to pause and shift your focus, or is it also in the same space as Judy?
Well, I'm actually going to take a step back. So when I read the article, I loved the invitation of recognizing in my life where I'm focusing on don't. So I didn't really, I think that's what the reminder was for me, because I was like, where do I focus on want? Where do I focus on want? And then I was like, well, where do I focus on don't? And maybe is there a way for me to flip it and gain some momentum by focusing on the want? When I was a few years ago working at an organization, and they gave us media training, and it was a really cool, it weaves its way back into my life in all different forms. But the practice was we would have the scenario of speaking to our brand, and we would talk to a person who would just try to come at all the really ugly angles of the brand that you don't really want to have to talk to if you ever talk to media. And the way that they said that you work through that scenario is by not addressing those things, but by reinforcing, this is what we stand for. This is what we're about. This is who we are. And it reminds me of that a little bit in it can be really easy to go to those dark territories of oh, but I really and I'll use a job, for example, you're in a job, the monotony of it. And it's oh, I don't want to have to do that. I don't want to have to be with that person who's going to complain again. And the invitation of well, what do you want to reinforce? What do you want to speak to? What are you excited about? And so for me, it invited me to explore in my life where I'm playing in the don't space, in the kind of dark space, and where can I reinvigorate and build momentum around my why, the reason I did it in the first place. And so job for me is the place where it's coming up. I have a project that I'm working on, and it's new. And so it's easy for me to go, oh my God, I'm going to get overwhelmed, or what if I suck at this? And I don't, instead of trying to mitigate myself from not being good at it, focusing on, I'm going to be creative, and I'm going to be a connector, and I'm going to share love with people, no matter with no judgment, or whatever it is, focusing on the thing I want to create versus trying to mitigate the things I don't want. So
yeah, Rachel, that I love how you shared that, because that was actually what I first sat down to start the article was the beginning thing that I talked about was that I went to the place of lose, right? I'm working so hard to lose something. I was losing stress. I was going to lose weight. I was going to, basically what I said in the article was lose my imperfections. And it just was not aligning for me, because it just didn't feel right. And it felt like this really heavy weight of constant fighting against something instead of fighting for something. And so I hear in that is like the being proactive, being able to like actually take action towards something versus, it just felt heavy.
Yeah. Well,
it's sustaining the loss.
Yeah. That's exactly right. It feels like when I focus on the fact that like, I don't want to have to, the things that you don't want may most likely still be there, like an annoying coworker who's going to complain about whatever,
Right.
But if I'm focusing on not wanting that, I'm focusing on that.
Exactly.
Versus it's going to exist. And I actually want to, be non-judgmentally loving. Like that's a very different space. Again, it doesn't mitigate the thing from happening, but it allows me to choose where I want to put my focus.
Well, and that's one of the things that I really appreciate about Thrive and the work that we do, because we allow people to acknowledge the don't wants in order to help them pause as, hey, something doesn't feel right. I don't want this. Okay, allow yourself then to pause, then allow yourself to sit back and discern for yourself what you do want, and then how you want to move forward with your shift in perspective. So I love that. I love the power of the pause and then the power of the perspective shift and the different ways you both have shared how you've been able to use that in your life. And so I guess what I would like to pose to those of you joining us today is, what are you ready to fight for instead of against? What are you ready to figure out? And what is your next step in doing that? How would you like to do that? And with that, I'd also like to ask Judy and Rachel if you have any other closing thoughts on how people might move forward with those questions or their next catapult, and any other closing thoughts you have for today.
Yeah, I'd love to go ahead with that. For me, it is about you finding your way. And so so if you can take kind of the underlying concepts of what actually worked for me, it's not about you deciding that strength, flexibility, and health are what you should be focusing on. It's about taking the pause and really discerning for yourself what it is that you want to be focusing on. What is your why of your motivation? And this can be used in all different areas and different aspects of life, not just exercise. So take that practice, get really solid in that, and then the practice of shifting to what is actually moving you forward. So
great.
Rachel, what about you?
The word that keeps coming up for me is coexist. And so in it, for me, I think is the idea that it doesn't have to be quite so black and white. And that's my interpretation of how I have previously lived, where it's like, it's either this person's complaining and I'm miserable, or they're not complaining, and that's how I can experience what I want to experience. And that's actually not true. A person can be miserable and complaining, and I can be loving and enjoying my life. And so playing in that coexisting space feels really fun when I am stuck in like, this sucks, and the only way it can be different and be better is if like this thing changes. Actually, I can just come back to myself and pause, like you're saying, and decide like, what do I actually want, and not try to control this other thing, but really coexist in my way. So yeah, that's what came up for me.
Cool. Thank you. Well, I'd like to invite everyone who's joining us today that if you are ready to reignite motivation for something, if you are ready to fight for something or figure something out and you aren't quite sure your path in doing that, Thrive can help you with that. We love to help people find their own paths to perspective shifts. And one great tool that we use to do that is human progress training. And that is starting next Thursday. And it's a 10-week course of super empowerment where you are invited to find your way to move you forward in life and to make life better. If you're interested in that, please take a look at thrivehdc.com and learn more about human progress training, get yourself registered, and then we'll see you next week to start your path to making life better. Thank you, guys. We'll see you next week.
Thanks, Rachel.
Bye.
Bye.